Today I will be talking through this new deck I got for Keyforge. This is the Rise of the Keyraken, and it is a cooperative adventure type of mode for Keyforge players. So I've really enjoyed playing this 2 versus the Keyraken, and then I've also played solo as well, and I've lost all those games, which is okay. I've gotten used to losing my games, but I do find that it's very fun. And I actually haven't played the Dark Tidings set yet. The only set I've played with so far is Worlds Collide and the Call of the Archons. So this Tide stuff is pretty neat. So the Keyraken, he comes with this low tide and high tide card. And basically throughout the game, these can be flipped over, and the low tide is better for the Keyraken, whereas the high tide is better for the players, for us. And so, just so you know what the Keyraken can do, his ability is that he's a beast, and his power is equal to 30 times the number of players. So playing solo, he would have 30 health basically and 30 attack. And the Keyraken only deals 3 damage while fighting. So it's not particularly strong in terms of fighting, but here's the catch. The Keyraken gets +2 armor for each unforged key the active player has. And at the start of the game, all players have a total of 3 unforged keys. So when you're up against this Keyraken and you want to fight him, you really have to be able to rack up more than 6 damage to even, have 1 damage placed on the Keyraken. And on the bottom in bold, it does say if the Keyraken is destroyed, the players win the game. So that is your goal, to defeat the Keyraken. So also, you can see the icon of the Keyraken. The Keyraken is a house, so that is the house of the Keyraken, and that's the icon that is representing the house. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, the low tide and the high tide card. So this really is the most interesting part of this deck. I would say it definitely makes the game feel fresh, for me at least. Although, I actually haven't been playing Keyforge for too long. I've only started this year. But the low tide side, basically, the Keyraken can advance, and there's that term advance, which I did not mention yet. But if the Keyraken advances 4 times, then the players actually lose the game. So when that happens, it's just a matter of how many amber the Keyraken has in his possession at the beginning of his turn. If he has 3 on low tide, then he gets to advance. If he has 6 or more, then he gets to advance. And those are the numbers for a solo player. So it really is 6 per player, low tide 3 per player. So the low tide side has an omni effect. So on my turn, on my team's turn, I can lose a total of 2 amber per player as a group to raise the tide. So that will make it more difficult for the Keyraken to advance, because he has to have almost double, basically, of the amber to even advance. But say, he does advance on the high tide. After Keyraken advances, lower the tide. So that's how this card works, and it's always placed out. It's always going to be out like that. So we have, let's see, all the other cards for the adventure deck, and this is a great amount of cards. I would say I haven't been through all of them yet in one solo adventure, and I think that helps with the replayability too. Of course, you'll see there are amber that's going to be provided to the Keyraken based on some of these cards. Like this action card will provide 1 amber. Some of them actually provide 2, like this one. So sometimes the adventure deck could be a bit of a struggle because you have to really, well, you can't anticipate the next draw will be 2 amber and the next one might be 1, and then all of a sudden they have 3 amber, and on low tide all they need is 3 on a solo game to advance. So that definitely makes it tough to battle him. And how this deck works is that you place it down, and then you would flip over 2 cards. So I do it one at a time, and I just resolve the first card, and I flip over the second, and I resolve the second card. So that's how that works. On easy mode, if you want to make it easier, you just have to flip over 1 card. And of course, the Keyraken also has a form of its own hand or archive pile. So when you play the game, you actually are told, you know, place a card face down in the archive. Like there are actions on these cards that say that, and also actions in your own decks that you might have that say, you know, return a creature to your opponent's hand, stuff like that. Then that's when you would place it on top as well. So how that works is, say I had a card that said that, place a card face down in the archive. Say I had another one that told me to do it, so now there's 2 in the archive. So when it comes around to the Keyraken's turn, he checks how many amber he has. If he has enough to advance per the low tide or high tide card, he advances. And then he continues his turn, and he always has to draw all the cards from the archive first. So he'll resolve all the archive cards first, and then he'll continue to draw the 2 from the adventure deck afterwards, and then resolving each as we go. So I thought that was an interesting way to manipulate someone playing from their hand, and then also in general how they gain amber as well. I thought this was very well thought out. I really enjoyed this solo adventure. I couldn't imagine how it would work until I actually had the cards in my hand. But I think the effects work very well. I can go through some of these real quick. So obviously there's creatures. I forgot to mention that. So the Keyraken will have creatures that will fight, mostly on his behalf, really. But actually most of them, I wouldn't say most, I don't know the ratio, but some of them don't fight. Some of them are just there to be someone I have to defeat. And then, so for instance, the shield arm has 6 power, 3 defense. And it's a creature, it has taunt, and once it's destroyed, its effect is deal 3 damage to the Keyraken, ignoring armor. So what that means is that it actually helps me defeat the Keyraken. And the idea is that these are the Keyraken's tentacles, and so if we defeat a part of this Keyraken, then that kind of dwindles him down a little bit. So the incentive for these creatures when they come out is that we do attack these creatures, even if they don't attack us. So same thing with Slippery Arm. 3 power, no defense. It has elusive, and it has a reap effect. If the tide is low, the Keyraken archives 1 adventure card. So as I said, we archived it face down, and then when it was the Keyraken's turn, he checks if he can advance, and then he draws all the archives, plays those cards, and then he draws the top 2 from the adventure deck and plays those cards as part of his turn. So continuing into the adventure deck, we have, let's see, I want to see something interesting here. So I'm going to try to find a creature that actually has a fight effect. Well, I'll mention Devour Whole. It's an action card, and it has a play effect. So when you play this card, it says, for the remainder of the turn, the Keyraken gains Skirmish and Prey, the least powerful creature. It fights, then readies. It will fight again when it is used. So that means on the Keyraken's turn, when you go to resolve his action, and normally it would be to reap automatically, but if he has this action, that means he gains Skirmish and he actually fights my least powerful creature. And if he fights, then it readies again to fight again. So that's a pretty interesting card that they created here. So yeah, here's a creature, Lashing Tentacle, and it has Prey, the most powerful creature, and Skirmish. And of course, once destroyed, deal 3 damage to the Keyraken, ignoring armor. So this is a good creature to make an example out of. Basically, if I've played this, it's out on the table, and it has this creature out. It's going to fight me during its turn. So during a Keyraken turn, it consists of the advance, which I've mentioned many times, and then it consists of going through every single creature from left to right. And when you draw from the adventure deck and you draw a creature, you place them always to the rightmost spot on the flank. So it will always be to the right of any existing creatures you've already placed. So going left to right, you'll resolve each card. So each creature will be resolved, and this creature in particular would be fighting. If I had Tenacious Arm out, it does not have Prey, it only has a Reap effect, then this will actually exhaust to Reap. And so that's how those two types of creatures work. What else? So you might notice this icon here is a bit of a small tide icon, and that basically kind of tells you that it has to do with this card. Not sure why they needed the icon there, because the text clearly says stun and exhaust one of your creatures that is not already stunned. If all of your creatures are stunned, destroy Whirlpool, Eddy, and lower the tide. So I mean, reading that, you know, it kind of has to do with the low tide, high tide card. But maybe there's a mechanic in Dark Tidings that I'm unsure about where the icon would be useful. And one thing I did keep forgetting was that the Keyraken is a house. So in one of my decks, I have a card that basically says, you know, count how many houses are on the battlefield, and then based off of that number, do something with it, right? Maybe deal that many damage based on the number of houses. I forget. And I didn't count the Keyraken as one of those houses. So that's pretty key to have that information on hand. Yeah, I mean, overall, I think this is a very well thought out adventure game. I really would have hoped that Fantasy Flight Games would have printed this out for retail, but they didn't, which is fine, because as you can see, I was able to get them printed. I think it was from makingplayingcards.com. Somebody, you know, printed it out, and I was able to purchase it for, I think it was under $10. So it's not bad. Lots of replayability here. They do have a second adventure out, which I might consider getting once I'm tired of this one, but I really am hoping that they do come out with a retail version of that deck, because these cards are a little bit different. Let's see, I don't know if you'll be able to tell here, but we have, so this is the Keyraken, and then we have this, the Illusionist, Grid, City Librarian. This is just the Decklist card. So you may not be able to tell, but it's definitely thinner than this. So it feels cheaper, which is fine, because this is what I paid for, and it's also not the same cut. So you could see it's just not the same size. It's just slightly smaller. You know, you can see the overlap. Which it doesn't bother me. It's not like I'm going to shuffle them together, but I would have preferred if the quality was the same. So I really do hope Fantasy Flight Games does end up, you know, selling this for people like me to buy. I think it would just make the game just a little bit more enjoyable. But other than that, I think this is great. I'm really excited to play this more often. Even though, you know, the pandemic is kind of almost becoming a thing of the past, I think I definitely will still continue playing solo. especially when it comes to card games, because I like to really think through my strategies. And for some reason, when I play with other people, I feel pressure to rush. So sometimes, I play with my husband and I don't do too well because I'm rushing. I feel pressure that, oh, I'm taking too long. And when I play solo, I don't have to worry about that. It's just my own time that I'm spending. So I definitely will be playing this with myself. And I hope you enjoyed this overview of the Rise of the Keyraken solo adventure deck. Thanks.